Electrifying SUVs is one of the best things we can do to clean up the personal transportation sector's climate impact simply because y'all are buying so damn many of them, and big ones at that. Converting the least efficient combustion-powered vehicles to electricity will do far more for the air we breathe than building tiny electric commuter cars no one buys. The 2023 Mercedes-Benz EQS450 SUV is the right vehicle at the right time for the modern American luxury SUV customer. Check the specs. It's all right there on digital paper. The EQS450 seats up to 7, has roughly the same interior space as Benz's own GLS class gas-powered SUV, makes way more power, is better off-road, and offers more luxury features. Even using the most expensive public charger, it'll cost less than $50 to fill up, and for the first year, it'll be completely free if you use one of the 6,000 plus in-network chargers nationwide. There are some disadvantages to consider, however. At $105,550 to start, the base EQS450 Plus SUV is nearly $30,000 more than an equivalent GLS 450. Mercedes says the long-range, rear-drive model will travel up to 305 miles on a charge, which is considerably less than the gas-powered, all-wheel-drive GLS 450's 500-mile range. On a high-speed DC fast charger, the EQS SUV will get from 10 to 80% battery charge in 31 minutes. Far slower than the time it takes to fill a gas tank, but not much different than the time it takes to use a bathroom, buy snacks and drinks, and check your phone. Unless you're a prolific road tripper, though, the EQS SUV will get the daily drive done just as well as the GLS while being quicker and quieter about it. Be it price or power, the EQS SUV line, and yes, because Mercedes idiotically named both the electric SUV and sedan EQS, we have to repeatedly specify which one we're talking about, starts not with the EQS 450 4MATIC, but with the EQS 450 Plus. In Mercedes speak, the plus sign denotes the long-range model, which in most cases, including this one, means it's rear-wheel drive. With 355 horsepower and 419 lb-ft of torque available at all times, it's really all the motor you need. We found the EQS 450 Plus to have ample power for getting around town and merging on fast-moving freeways. Zipping by slow traffic on the highway isn't exciting like it is in some other EVs, but it's quick enough. Mercedes estimates it'll hit 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds, which is perfectly adequate. We drove both the EQS 450 and 450 Plus, and the observable differences are almost entirely limited to acceleration and range. Not powering the front wheels hasn't made a meaningful difference in steering feel on the 450 Plus. It's as muted as the exclusively all-wheel drive EQS 450 4MATIC. For 7-passenger luxury SUVs, the steering in either model is perfectly adequate, sharp enough to get the job done without bothering a driver who isn't looking for sportiness in their more than 6,000-pound people mover. Range-wise, the 450 Plus goes 20 miles further on a charge than the 450 or the high-powered 580 4MATIC, reaching an aforementioned total estimate of 305 miles. That and the $3,000 difference in starting price are enough to recommend the 450 Plus over the 450 4MATIC, unless you need that all-wheel drive system. If you do, the opposite applies. Losing some range and paying a few thousand more isn't a bad deal for significantly more torque, snappier acceleration, and enhanced traction in the rain and snow. The 450 4MATIC's lower 285-mile estimated range is mostly because it needs to power a second electric motor driving the front wheels. While you're still looking at 355 horsepower, it's now complemented by a healthy 590 lb-ft of torque, enough to knock the 0 to 60 time down to 5.8 seconds. That's what you really feel behind the wheel. Whether at a stoplight or passing on the highway, the 450 4MATIC surges forward much more authoritatively. If even part of your interest in owning an EV is for the acceleration, the dual-motor powertrain is worth the price. In a vehicle this big, it feels downright quick, no matter what the spec sheet says. If it's not enough for you, though, there's always the 580 4MATIC with its 536 horsepower and 633 lb-ft. Oh, stop it. Otherwise, the 450 4MATIC drives like a quicker 450 Plus, and that's it. Much like the steering, the braking feel between the two isn't noticeably different, despite the extra regenerative capacity afforded by a second motor. Both have normal-feeling brake pedals, right up until the moment the mechanical brakes engage. The transition from regenerative to friction braking is very obvious, and it generally happens when you need to slow down quickly. As soon as you reach the limit of the regenerative brakes, the pedal gets very firm and hard to push, which really underscores the fact you're trying to stop a 3-ton vehicle on a dime, or at least a quarter. If you're a one-pedal driving acolyte, you'll be disappointed to hear it also does the same obnoxious moving brake pedal thing the EQ sedans do. Set the regenerative braking to strong with the left steering wheel paddle, and every time you ease up on the accelerator pedal the brake pedal will start moving toward the floor. Mercedes engineers seem to think this will make it feel like it's in the right place should you need to use it, but in practice, it simply feels wrong. Good news is, when you're one-pedal driving, you almost never touch the brake pedal, so it isn't too bothersome. But if you're the kind to brake with your left foot, it will drive you mad, especially if you're driving quickly on a back road. Our recommendation: turn on creep mode if you can find it buried in the vehicle settings, so the vehicle will come to a complete stop on regenerative braking around town, and switch the Regen to normal or turn it off entirely when driving on a good road. If it isn't obvious just by looking at the 2023 EQS SUV, this isn't a car for tearing up a canyon. Did we mention this thing is 6,000 pounds or more? Even with up to 10 degrees of rear steering, this is not a sporty SUV. A nimble one, yes, easy to bend around a crowded parking lot, but not an oversized sports car by any means. In fact, it's the first EV we've driven that didn't feel like its center of gravity is 10 feet underground. Usually, the massive battery pack slung under the vehicle makes it feel super planted and lower to the ground. Not the EQS SUV. This one feels kinda tippy and top-heavy. Sure, once you turn into a corner and the vehicle leans over on its suspension, it settles in and everything's fine, but nothing about the initial turn-in feels sporty or playful. If anything, it feels like this luxury cruise ship really doesn't want to change directions. For those of you who do live at the top of a mountain, know that the EQS SUV has enough grip and plenty of punch out of the corners to get to the bottom quickly. But this is not a replacement for your Cayenne. This thing is best kept in the city and on the highway where handling doesn't matter. Time to ride. We sound like a corrupted audiophile here, but we have to keep talking about the weight of this thing. The standard air suspension works wonders, but there's only so much you can do with 3 tons suspended on big 20-inch wheels and rubber band tires. On a smooth road, the EQS SUV rides like butter. It's a sensory deprivation chamber. The only noise you hear comes from those tires. They're a bit talkative, but it's mostly because there's nothing else to drown them out. Then you hit an expansion joint, or a crack in the pavement, or a pothole. It doesn't matter, because no matter how small an imperfection, you'll feel it. Every crack sealed with a bit of tar will send a little shudder up the seats. Yes, the dampers handle the bumps immediately, and they don't affect the vehicle's composure, but you'll feel and hear every one of them. Behind the third row, there's a decent amount of space for a 3-row SUV, and even a bit of extra space under the cargo floor. Dropping the third row is slightly awkward, as you need to grab the rocker handles on the seat shoulders and push them all the way forward until the lock suddenly releases and the seats fall forward. Getting the seats back up is the real challenge. There are no straps to pull, and the seats are too far away to reach standing behind the vehicle. Your options are to go motor the second row seats out of the way and push them up from inside, or climb up in the back far enough to reach them. Either way, it's slow and inelegant. It's an odd oversight, especially given there are switches in the cargo area that electrically fold the second row seats down or up. Once all the seats are out of the way, the cargo space is downright cavernous. As much as the EQS SUV may look smaller than the GLS class on the outside, it's got it where it counts. Oh, and you can forget about putting extra stuff up front under the hood. Mercedes-Benz still hasn't figured out how to package its HVAC equipment in such a way that allows for a front trunk like every Tesla has had for a decade. The verdict: if you're one of the 35% of car shoppers looking to go electric with your next car and you have the means and the need to spend 6 figures on a luxury SUV, you can't do any better than the 2023 Mercedes EQS SUV. It isn't perfect, but neither is the Tesla Model X, which is even more expensive and has a less fancy interior, half a steering wheel, and less space for people and cargo. Keep the EQS SUV to the daily commute, and you'll have the private luxury cruise ship of your dreams.